Told you.
Great, we're live. That was so easy. Nick, how you doing?
Great.
Great.
We got there.
We got there. Thank you, YouTube. Very awesome. So Nick, you have got some amazing stuff to talk about tonight. I'm excited.
Me too.
You've got music and AI and aged care. So there's some very interesting topics.
That's quite the trifecta,
It
isn't it?
is. It is a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us what is it that you're doing right now?
Okay, well, we have just soft launched a music service for our aging population to help them with their cognitive decline.
Right.
And
all of their cognitive decline.
Yeah, look, I'll get into it in a bit more detail in a moment, but the premise is very simple. As we age, our brain gets older.
Mm-hmm.
And an aging brain means a bunch of different things, but one of them is inactivity.
Yep.
And one of the most powerful ways to keep the brain active and stimulated is listening to music.
Right.
That's true for all of us.
Yes.
But obviously for somebody getting older, it's more impactful and it's more useful.
Yeah.
So we wanted to build something that was very easy to use.
Yeah.
And easy to understand, but would still have the impact that it needed in order to be useful.
Yeah.
And it really started out as a passion project where I was looking to build a music service that my parents could use.
Right.
That was really the premise.
Yeah, cool.
Spotify
wasn't working for them, so.
No, so this is the problem with a lot of older people, and it's not generalizing, but for my parents, it's true.
Yeah.
They absolutely love music.
Yeah.
They always have.
Yeah.
I got into music because of them and their love for it and being very supportive. And it was very noticeable to me in the last couple of years that they just stopped listening to music altogether.
Right.
And when I asked them about it, it was always kind of like, I don't know. And it became very clear that it was just, I got them both accounts on various streaming services and taking a break. And still nothing. And when I saw them using their devices, like they struggle with just simple emails.
Yeah.
And it's just because technology is not part of their life, really.
Non-intuitive.
It's something that came later.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to build something very, very easy for them, because the reality is, in the last couple of years, I've seen, the early stages of cognitive decline happen to both of them.
Right.
And knowing how powerful music can be, and how much they love music, I thought, you know what, I need to be able to provide something to my parents at least, to make it easier for them. And when I started thinking about this in a bit more detail, I thought, well, why don't I actually think bigger and focus on the bigger problem? And my grandmother had Alzheimer's. She passed away from that. And towards the end of her life, oftentimes we'd come into the room and then no idea who we were, agitated. And music was pretty much the only thing that helped. And it was the one thing that we could play that she would sort of immediately come back, and then, she'd recognize us. You could see it in her eyes straight away, where she'd be like, "Oh, it's you," type thing. And she'd also just be more relaxed and enjoying herself again. It was always Andre Rieu for her. Andre Rieu. Classic. It's really funny because he's originally a Dutch guy. My grandmother was Dutch. But playing all the classics in a very sort of avant-garde way. It's quite a show. But anyway, my grandmother loved it. And so I always knew that was powerful. I studied musicology, and
which is
it's a very fancy way of saying the study of music. It's a very fancy term.
So nothing to do with like the brain and music. It's just
it can as well, but it's a very broad subject. Like in academia, musicology could be the string density of a violin in the 1700s.
Right.
Which yours.
Tell us all about it.
Not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I started studying it because I was very interested in learning more about the effects music was having on people around me. So I was a professional DJ back in the day.
What was that all about?
So for me, because I started professionally very young, I was trying to always understand what was going on when I was playing for this room full of strangers.
Yeah.
There was always this connection.
Yeah.
And it sounds a little bit, you know,
yeah, very spiritual.
Spiritual, but it was very clear to me that something
was happening.
Something was happening. And funnily enough, I think 2004, I bought a Prince album called Musicology.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that's a cool word.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
And then when I started reading up about it, I thought, wow, this is fascinating. There's this whole world out there that I had no idea about.
Yeah.
And then I started reading about neuroscience, and that just fascinates me.
Yeah.
But ever since that CD, I basically tried to read every book that I could on music and the brain, music and the body.
Yeah.
Being a DJ, I was always obsessed with genres, so understanding how they came about, what's the history of musical instruments.
Did it make you an awesome DJ?
This was sort of towards the end of my DJ career.
Yeah.
But what made it really interesting is that I started being much more curious about different sounds and different genres.
Right.
Every DJ has their sound,
Okay.
and my sound was quite broad, but obviously I was very interested in learning more about the music that I like to play.
Yeah.
But then through this process, I started learning about all other types of music, and the connections that people have through it and how they communicate.
Yeah.
And it just fascinated me. So it opened up a whole new world, and it allowed me to listen to a lot more music, which was really, really fun.
Yeah. Not all of us tracks and heavy hardcore.
No, not at all, not at all. But so I combined all of that to sort of come up with this technology, and I'll come back to that in a second. But that led to this platform. And there were a couple of things that I really wanted to address. So music therapy, I think, is incredibly powerful and very beneficial.
What does that mean, music therapy?
So music therapy as a profession
Yeah.
is a trained therapist that will sit down with somebody and work together with them, and then use music to heal or treat or support somebody that's going through something. And it can be a bunch of different things. But music therapy for people with dementia has very clearly got some very positive results.
Yeah.
The downside to it is that it's very manual and it's very one-on-one.
Right.
And therefore expensive.
Right.
You know, having a therapist with you one-on-one for 45 minutes and then follow up. And so that was one thing. It's expensive and it's not accessible to everyone.
But you can't be getting a music therapist.
No. And with the rate of dementia and cognitive decline in general,
none of you now.
There will never be enough music therapists. So I wanted to build something scalable.
Yeah.
That was one thing. The second thing, and I know this as a curator, so I've literally created thousands of playlists for clients over the years.
Yeah.
It's incredibly hard to do. It's very, very time consuming.
Right.
And so I know that for a music therapist to be able to find the right music for an individual that you don't really know is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
You're limited by your own knowledge of music.
Yeah. Because different people will respond to different.
Absolutely. It's incredibly personal.
Yeah.
It's because if you grew up in New Zealand
Yeah.
and then spent your teenage years somewhere else and then ended up in Australia, that's very different to your friends that spent their whole life in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Or in my case, born in Holland, raised in Spain, living here.
Yeah.
You know, it's unique to me, and therefore my music taste is formed by that life.
Yeah.
So anyway, for a music therapist, it's quite tricky to be able to find all of that.
Yeah.
And especially, in one session or two sessions.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what if I could build a tool that allowed them to work way more efficiently?
Right.
So that was kind of the second thing. And then the third was, if we want to build something scalable and easy to access, it needs to be a self-sustaining business.
Yeah.
It needs to be a licensed business.
Right.
So
why licensed business?
Well, because music is a tricky area, tricky space.
Right.
Most people have no idea how music licensing works. It's a very complex beast. And in fact, most people in the music industry don't really know how it works. But the reality is you need to have a license to be able to play music.
Right.
If you're playing it
someone else's music.
Someone else's music, commercial music that's available online. So the same way you have to pay for Spotify, to be able to listen to music on there.
You play Sony for a Sony song. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the solutions that were out there for music therapy were not doing that. So by default, it was never going to be a scalable solution because it was either let me create a playlist for you here and I'll download these songs and put them on an iPod for you.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. The problem with that as well was that there was no feedback mechanism.
Yeah, because how well would you know what songs what you put on an iPod and actually play them to the person and actually sing a response?
Exactly. It's trial and error at
Yeah.
the best of times because you really have to work together with somebody to understand what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So, sort of looking at all of those problems, we wanted to resolve all of that in the platform and say, okay, well, what if we could build a platform that would allow somebody like you and me to be able to create this playlist or these playlists or these music experiences for somebody that we care for or somebody that we love that has cognitive decline without necessarily needing to know all the steps you need to take to find the right music.
Right.
And that was the premise, that was the start of it. That was for me, ticking two boxes for my own benefit, which was an easy-to-use platform for my parents, but also something that I know is going to help them in the long term now that they're getting older and getting older quicker.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are today. So the platform is called Muru Music Health, and it's essentially a subscription service, it's a membership service, and people can pay for that. It's $67.90 for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's online so that you don't have to worry about what device to use, how many times you have to update the app. It's easy to access.
Yeah.
And it's been designed so that anyone can use it.
Right. So press the button and then...
Yeah, there's a bit of onboarding in terms of answering some questions like your date of birth, the language you speak, and things like that. But after that, it's quite literally 3 playlists that you choose from that have been tailored to your taste and your background.
Right. Based on just text answers, you create 3 playlists. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Simplified, essentially what it comes out with is a relaxed, memory, or energized playlist for you.
Okay.
The AI component and the smarts behind it are the ability of our technology to be able to analyze a song, the raw audio of a song, in the same way the human brain does.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really fun.
Yeah, how the human brain analyzes music?
Yeah, so thanks to MRIs, they've been able to scan brains for quite a while now and see how people react to certain types of music.
Right.
And
so you can see what areas line up, but how do you know what the processing is? Like
it's incredibly complex, but neuroscientists, there's a lot of research papers on this. It's really, I've read a lot of them. It's very fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
But the principles, is something that I learned in musicology. They're very, very basic, which is our brain is always on.
Yes.
Our hearing is always on.
Yes.
We're always processing information.
Yes.
And they have tested this, neuroscientists have tested this in the labs with different kinds of sounds and different kinds of responses. And we now know that the brain, because it's essentially a very primitive thing, it's been around, evolving for for a moment. We now know that the way the human brain processes things, it all comes down to fight or flight. Is what we hear Can we kill us? Or can we relax?
Yeah.
That's essentially what it comes down to.
Right.
But then the
There's
brain...
higher order though, right? There's like you're relaxing or being more energized. Like that's different from fight or flight.
It is, but it's a component of that. So it all comes down to the essence of sound in. What is it?
Yes.
Am I safe?
Right.
What is this telling me? Is it something I've heard before?
Right.
And this comes back to music.
Yeah.
And then you instantly know, okay, I can just deal with the sound, it's fine, or I need to do something.
Deal with the sound bad.
So a car honks the horn right next to you, you'll jump. It's a reaction like, oh, something's happening.
Yeah.
Or a bird singing, and you hear it in the morning, you go, oh yeah, I hear that every day, that's totally fine. And the brain is very, very good at that.
Yeah.
But when we listen to music, what's really fascinating is there's several different things happening. So a song that has a vocal,
Yeah.
has a melody, it has a beat pattern, rhythm.
Yeah.
Those are all different areas of the brain
Right.
that process that.
Right.
But because the song, it's all happening at the same
yeah,
time,
yeah.
they're all processing it at the same time,
Yeah.
and then they need to communicate with each other to say, oh yeah, this is,
That sounds good, or that feels right.
yeah, and at the most basic level, what the brain does, it says, A, have we heard the song before? Yes or no? Is it new information? Is it something that we know?
Yeah.
This is the reason why pop songs sound the same.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
We're tricking the brain.
Yeah.
To
So you recognize it, past one.
exactly. The second is the vibe of the music. So how does it feel? What kind of music is it?
Yeah.
Happy or sad? Now again, that's relative.
Yeah.
Your happy and my happy would be different.
Yeah, yeah. But it's different being happier is better than not.
Yeah, but it's the vibe. It's like, oh, what is the feeling of the song? How do I perceive it?
Yeah.
And that also depends on your personal mood at the time.
Yeah.
If you're in a really bad mood, then the song will be perceived differently.
Right.
So when you combine all of those things together, and then the fact that the brain has to process this, we now know that it's actually one of the most hardcore processes for the brain in general.
Right.
And
So differential equations and processing music.
basically,
Right.
basically, that's what it comes down to. And that's why, there's lots of experiments around when you play jazz or classical music,
Yeah.
Studies say that people are more intelligent.
Yeah.
That's not actually what happens. What happens is the brain is better at processing complex information because it's more used to it.
Right. Just warmed up.
Basically, yeah. It's like you're stretching before you do some physical exercise. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, right.
So when you think about that in the context of an aging brain,
Mm-hmm.
at the most basic level, as we get older, our brain starts changing. It
Right.
does a neuron dump. It gets released. It releases a lot of cells.
Why?
That's just the brain going, don't need this.
Yeah. You haven't used this for ages, we're cleaning it out.
Yeah, well, so brain aging technically happens in sort of the mid-20s.
Right.
Because some people say it's 24, some people say it's 28.
Yeah.
And it's completely normal.
Right.
But when you
Is
get
there a
to,
purpose why it would do that? Like,
because when you're younger, as a baby, obviously your brain
yes,
is
absorb everything.
growing massively. When you're a teenager, growing massively.
Yeah.
And then in your 20s, it's kind of sort of figure it out. And then
Yeah,
goes,
it's
okay,
safe now. So
discard what we don't need.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm simplifying this massively,
yeah, that's okay.
but that's kind of the premise of it.
Yeah.
So when we think of getting older, and this is particularly when you're sort of over the age of 60,
Yeah.
then there's parts of or your brain cells that are not being used as much anymore,
Right.
and they stiffen up.
Right.
The same way as if you don't do exercise.
Yeah, you actually.
Yeah, it's very normal.
Yeah.
And on the one end, for most people, it's like, oh, where did I leave my keys? And maybe sometimes that happens a bit more often.
Yeah.
Like one of my parents, I won't mention who,
Yeah.
says that more often than not.
Yeah.
But if that's all it is, it's fine.
Yeah, it's hard.
But on the other end of that, we have dementia.
Yeah.
And that's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
It's a very evil disease, I would say, having lived through it myself and my family. It's very scary and it's very confronting because it's always very hard to understand what's really happening.
Yeah. Right.
The way I've explained this before, I always thought my grandmother was playing a joke on me.
Right.
I'd walk into the room and she wouldn't recognize me, like,
Kid,
stop it. Because we always had really good banter. It was always a very...
It was a normal joke. Until...
There was a lot of fun always there, and it was a big point for her. I was the only boy on that side of the family, out of all the cousins. So there was always that special connection there as well. And there was always good fun. So when this started happening, I didn't understand. I was very young, and I just thought, what is this been doing? It's crazy. And it wasn't until much later that I really understood what it meant.
Yeah.
And it's a very weird sensation to know somebody your whole life and then looking into their eyes and seeing that they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So again, music has its place here where it's a very powerful stimulus, but it has no known side effects. It's
Yeah,
music.
yeah. Oh.
You can occasionally listen to a song that you don't like, and that can be not nice.
Yeah, well, annoy you, but
it's relative to other things and other options, it's incredibly safe and it's incredibly fun if it's done right.
Yeah.
So obviously, playing a musical instrument is a level up because then you're even using more parts of the brain.
Yeah.
But the reality is that for most people, that's not an option, particularly later in life, because it can be quite frustrating. I'm a frustrated musician. I was classically trained, but you give me a guitar now and I'll get very annoyed because I know the motions, but I don't remember the chords. Yeah. So playing a musical instrument is not for everyone, but music listening generally is.
Yeah.
And again, my grandmother, she actually didn't enjoy a lot of music. She also had depression throughout her life.
Right.
Music oftentimes wasn't a thing she enjoyed.
Right.
But when she had Alzheimer's, Andre Rieu, always.
Yeah.
It was a win.
So she would light up, she'd be smiling.
Yeah, well, so there's a thing called brain fog, which is essentially somebody just is confused. They're not really there. They don't really understand what's going on around them. They can get agitated. With dementia, you have something called PTSD, which is the behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's depression, loneliness, agitation, anxiety.
Yeah.
All these things that come with just feeling not very well.
Yeah.
And all of these things can be alleviated in one form or another with music.
Right.
So
it's very common.
This is very powerful, but we as humans have, for the longest time, just seen music as a form of entertainment and nothing more. We don't actually value music. We've seen this with obviously Napster and streaming. Like, you have to pay for music. This is crazy. Which is a real shame because the people that dedicate their lives to creating beautiful music that actually helps you in so many ways, I think is very valuable. So
that's a whole talk.
That's a whole other conversation, and I'll save that for another time. But the point here is there's a very large spectrum of brain aging.
Yeah.
Music is beneficial to all of this.
Yeah.
Music can just be good for general wellness because it can keep you activated. Just like every person should walk every day and do some stretching and eat healthy food, music should be a part of that diet. But particularly for people that are getting where the cognitive decline is getting worse.
Yeah. Usually next at 60 years of age, then it starts getting worse.
Well, it starts being more noticeable. My parents are mid-70s now. In the last couple of years, I've really seen the progression happening. Yeah. They would never admit to it.
No.
And if they would be here right now, I'd probably get a
slap on the back of the head.
But it's noticeable to me, and it's quite a confronting moment when you see that happening with your parents who you see otherwise always being very strong. So it's moments like that where you're okay, I need to provide something here because obviously I want my parents to be around for a very long time. So the mission with all of this is, we don't provide a cure. There is no cure for this, and it's not like listen to music 20 minutes every day and we'll get rid of all your ailments. That's not what this is at all. This is all about extending your independence for as long as possible.
Right. So if you start at 16 and you are having start of dementia, you're starting to forget things, then if you do listen to music X number of minutes a day, the right kind of music, then that means you won't worsen that fast. So it could be held at bay for a while, or what's the...
It will slow it down. Like I said, it doesn't cure anything, but it slows it down. And there's no magical number saying if you listen to music for 2.5 minutes, boom. It's more, you need to keep music in your life to keep your brain stimulated in a nice way. But it doesn't have to be, a lot of people think then, because they see this often with music therapy, there'll be images of people in an aged care home with headphones on and then somebody sitting in front of them, like watching them listen to a song. That's not what it needs to be at all. Right. In fact, it's my belief that it can be music playing in the background because, again, your hearing is always on. If we would have music on the background now, our brain would still be processing it. So in fact, we actually encourage people that, when you're playing a puzzle at home or playing Scrabble with family, also play some music on the background.
Right.
Not at a level where it's distracting.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're trying to concentrate, you need certain type of music that's not, full of vocals because that's distracting.
Yeah.
So you want the relaxing music. But on the other end, if you're having a day where you're feeling sort of low on energy, listen to some energetic music because it really does help. And so just to add to that, we know that the memory part of this, so music is one of the most powerful stimulants to trigger memories,
right.
And particularly the memories that are deep down in the brain.
Yeah.
And that's not songs that are on the radio daily, but rather the songs that formed part of your childhood, particularly your teenage years. Again, we're talking about the brain being a sponge.
Yeah.
We all have moments from our past that are tied to music or tied to specific memories.
Yeah.
And music is the best way to sort of relive those instantly, right? I'm pretty sure that anyone listening to this can think of that moment where they've heard a song and they've instantly gone, oh, that reminds me of.
Yeah.
It's just a very powerful stimulant. So for triggering memory, it's great, and that's particularly useful for people with late stage cognitive decline, like dementia.
Yeah.
But in terms of relaxing, we know this, and there's also hundreds of meditation apps out there that talk about this. But with music particularly, if you listen to relaxing music that helps you relax, it can actually reduce your levels of cortisol.
Right.
Cortisol is a stress hormone. We need cortisol because, again, that's part of our fight or flight.
Yeah.
We need that there to let us know when we need to, worry about something.
Yeah.
But too much of it is very dangerous.
And long term.
And long term is very dangerous. It can lead to all kinds of things like high blood pressure, bad sleeping patterns, and a whole bunch of other things. So again, this is a very easy way to keep the cortisol at bay.
Yeah.
Just by listening to relaxing music. And for example, I live on a very busy street in Sydney. Playing relaxing music in the living room drowns out the noise of the busy street.
Yeah.
Helps me relax.
Right.
Simple as that. On the other side of things, if we need music to give us a boost, an energy boost, what that actually does is it releases dopamine in the brain.
Yeah.
And dopamine being the pleasure hormone, also very important.
Yeah. It gives you energy or just makes you feel good?
It makes you feel it's the motivator. Now, if you think about dementia again, about being not motivated, feeling depressed, being lonely, you need motivation.
Yeah.
Dopamine is incredibly important to bring that motivation out. But the other thing is dopamine is the messaging service between the brain and the body.
Yeah.
So we need dopamine to have everything working properly. Yeah. So when there is no dopamine,
something's missing.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Now, when we get older, we produce less dopamine by default. And again, that's normal.
Right.
But
it sucks.
It does suck. But there's lots of ways to get that. It's not just music, but music is just play music that you love that is energetic, and it will give you that hit.
So the grumpy old man just says no dopamine. Is
that less than most, probably. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's funny because people call me the grumpy old man.
Right.
But I listen to a lot of music, and it definitely gives me that energy boost. It's when I go to the gym, it's energetic music.
Yeah.
When I'm going to an important meeting or I'm doing a presentation, I'll listen to particular songs before that to get me in the mood.
Yeah.
And so again, creating this dopamine for somebody that is low on dopamine, super beneficial.
Yeah.
So this is not science fiction. This has been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
We're only just sort of understanding how it all works.
Yeah.
And
the effects on the brain.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough that we created a technology where we were able to sort of provide the tools to find the music that is most likely to provide you with these benefits.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. It's not a magic pill. It's not a press play and your world will change. The platform needs to learn from you too, and you need to give it feedback so it can understand what's going on. But when it does, then it essentially comes down to press play because I need to relax, press play because I need an energy boost, and it will play the right music.
Yeah.
And I personally think that's incredibly powerful.
So how does one provide feedback to the application? So how do you, because you were saying earlier that it's hard for elderly people to work with modern technology, they're not used to it.
Yeah.
So how is it easy for people to say yes, no, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we did a whole lot of workshops on this to make sure that older people could use this, and average age of 80. And so we're looking at accessibility, like the color schemes, to make sure that somebody with poor visibility could still see it. Things like not using a lot of icons, but rather text-based buttons, things like that. So we did a lot of workshops around that. But ultimately, my mother was my test subject.
Can you pick number one?
Knowing the level of her technology skills, it was always like, all right, if you can do this, then I know we're good.
Yeah.
And my mother's Dutch, so the feedback is always very honest.
Yeah.
But it allowed me to really think about, okay, what are the things that are obvious to me, but are not obvious to her? And so at the moment, because this is very much version 1, the feedback is still manual in the sense that you have to press the button. It's the heart or the dislike.
Yeah.
And then you provide some feedback with that. So I love this song. Why? It reminds me of my wedding.
Right.
That information goes into the AI and it learns from that.
Yeah.
I don't like this song because it reminds me of something negative.
Yeah.
The song gets removed, we remember that.
Yeah.
Phase 2 of this, which is what I'm really excited about, is being able to integrate this into wearables where we can measure your heart rate variability.
Yeah.
And there, again, this is not the research I've done, but other people that are way more intelligent than I am.
Yeah.
Some of whom are advisors in my company.
Okay.
They have researched this for a very long time, and they know now that you can get a baseline of somebody's heart rate variability,
right?
And then you can play the music and very easily deduct whether they like that song or not.
Wow, that's from the heart rate.
Just from the heart rate. They've done it with brain waves as well, the frequencies.
Yeah.
But heart rate variability is particularly interesting to me because if we think again of the use case of dementia, on the one end we can have, late stage Alzheimer's, which can often mean somebody becomes nonverbal. Yeah. There's no way to just look at somebody and go, oh, they love this song.
There's no response.
Sometimes there's no response, but the heart will respond. And it will be able to give us more information than we're able to get now. Even for a music therapist that's trying to observe and see what's going on. But if you imagine somebody with sort of advanced Parkinson's, it'd be very hard to play around with a little screen, and press buttons or just anyone that has reduced accessibility. So again, a wearable device means they don't have to actually do anything. The feedback happens automatically. We also obviously want to make this voice enabled so that people that are with reduced mobility but perfect speech can then say, don't like this, I want more of this, and it will automatically adapt. And this very much has to do with how our AI groups songs together. And it does that based on the vibe. And if you recall, I mentioned that's how the brain sort of processes music. It gets the feel of the songs and then says, oh, this type of vibe makes me feel relaxed. Great, now we know what you like, now we know how to find this. So that's sort of the iterations of where this is going. And what's really exciting about that for me personally is we are creating the personalized experience that I personally always wanted as well. But that is actually able to provide more than just entertainment. It's providing independence. And the reality in all of this, and I think we'll touch on this a bit more, aged care is a very complex space, as you know. But the biggest problem I see in this, and which is why we entered this space, is the cost around care. It's incredibly complex, and it's very time-consuming and expensive to care for people that cannot care for themselves. Whether it's any kind of disability or something else, it's somebody has to be there constantly. And that's true with somebody with
cognitive. Well, there needs to be support available.
Absolutely. And that's very, very expensive.
Yeah.
We know with dementia alone that the global cost of care is already exceeding $1.5 trillion a year.
Right.
And that's growing exponentially.
Yeah.
So there will be a point where governments, economies just can't cope with the cost of the infrastructure.
Yeah, right.
So what happens then?
Yeah.
So it's incredibly important now that the baby boomers are all retiring to find more efficient ways to keep it independent longer.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what are we going to do?
There's no other options.
There really is not that many other options unless we think of some magical way of. Obviously, I would like to think that there'll be a cure for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other forms of dementia.
But you can't hold your breath at the same time.
You have to think beyond that and go, if that happens, that's a Hail Mary and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, what else can we do? We can't just go, oh, we'll just wait until somebody figures it out. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. So, you see, you can't really have a certain, you can't prescribe how much music someone should do. It's good just to have in the background. Should you just have it going all the time when you're awake and that will get you the best benefit for your psychology? Is that a safe thing to say?
No. Sorry. That would have been a much easier answer. No, it is very different for every person. I know for me, for example, I listen to music probably 2 to 3 hours every day.
Yeah.
That's on a quiet day.
Yeah.
When I'm really into it, it's probably half a day. Always have my headphones in.
Yeah.
But for other people, it can be a lot less. The point with all of this is that if you have things going on in your life that can be a trigger for agitation, whether it's noises from outside or your living situation or being alone with yourself and not feeling comfortable, whatever the situation might be, then music is a great companion to support you. And like I said, it can be you're playing puzzles with the family, play some music on the background.
Yeah.
It can be that you're sitting at home and you're feeling a little bit lonely, play some music. It can be for somebody that is caring for somebody else, where they're sort of struggling with it, add some music into it to make it easier.
Yeah.
So I feel bad using my grandmother and my mother as an example all the time, but with my grandmother at times, when she didn't know what was going on, it was quite tricky to get her to go and have a shower.
Right.
Because there's a bunch of strangers undressing me.
What's going on?
This is really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Whereas when the music was playing and she knew what was going on, it was more like, hey, you should probably have a shower now. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's go and do that.
Yeah.
That seems like a small thing.
Yeah.
But particularly if you are a family member caring by yourself or you are a professional carer caring for somebody, that is then your time and potentially somebody else's time to support you to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And those costs add up.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, the biggest cost around any type of care is the unregistered costs, I guess I would call them, of the family is just dealing with the situation and sacrificing their time.
Yeah, and their pace.
Yeah. So it's pretty confronting,
Yeah.
And for me, this is the part that I can play to try and make this a lot better.
Yeah.
Truthfully, the biggest part of all of this is raising awareness around the benefits of music, because most people have no idea.
Yeah.
And often people tell me, "Oh, why don't I just turn the radio on and then
that's it.
It's fine, just play the hits." And it's a little bit more complex than that. And people are also, we humans in general, if we don't see an immediate change, we kind of lose faith.
Yeah, with value.
It's the same as somebody going to the gym for a week and then going, "Oh, I didn't lose 20 kilos." That doesn't work. Or going to the gym every day but eating a hamburger.
Yeah.
It's a process for sure.
Yeah.
But it works. It 1,000% works. It sounds horrible to say it this way, but I've been self-medicating
on music
my whole life with music.
Yeah.
Truthfully, there's been things that have happened in my life that weren't that great.
Yeah.
And music was a way for me to sort of heal and process things. And I still do it today.
Yeah.
it's incredibly powerful. But I'm very fortunate that I know what to look for and how it works.
Yeah.
So I now want to share that with the world and give them the tools so they don't need somebody like me to sit there and tell them how to do it.
And interview them and figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do it yourself. It's really not that hard. We've created the tools now.
Yeah.
Go forth and enjoy. Have fun with it as well. You know, it is music at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But trust the process. And if it's for you 5 minutes a day, fantastic. If it's an hour a day, also great. What have you got to lose?
And so you're thinking this is going to go into aged care residential homes, or is it at home, or this gets you everywhere? Like, what's the application?
So it's definitely both, because obviously in aged care, then you're talking about assisted care, so people are no longer really independent.
Yeah.
And the idea there is actually to provide the support, not just for them, so provide entertainment and provide quality of life, but also for the carers. There's a tremendous amount of stress that carers have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Honestly, nurses and carers, I have the biggest respect for. It's incredibly tough.
Yeah.
So it's also to help them alleviate the pressures that they have to deal with day to day. And again, the example of my grandmother having a shower.
Yeah.
If by playing the right music for Mary, who is in a home, makes it easier for the carer to then deal with them.
How about have a shower?
Amazing. But again, our mission is all about independence.
Right.
So the focus is way more on trying to keep people independent at home as long as possible. But people in retirement villages, same thing.
Yeah.
You're in a community already, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Use this music so that you can stay in that situation for as long as possible.
Yeah. And so I guess this is starting now, and you know, the huge body of work, basically, just say, here are the results, and then everyone say, great, we'll do it.
Yeah, so with all of these things, and particularly in the sector that we're in, it's very important for a lot of people to see concrete evidence, hard evidence. Otherwise, it's like, well, we don't know how to roll this out. So we are doing the research. We are starting research with the Global Center for Modern Aging out of Adelaide in January.
Yep.
And we're working together with Barossa Village, which is a dementia care unit.
Yeah.
Very small one, focusing specifically on that. We decided to work with them because they've worked with music therapy and different types of music tools for the longest time, and they really believe in it.
Cool.
So what we're trying to do there is see what the barriers to entry are when we roll this out in a facility like this.
Yeah.
You know, is it where the barriers for the carers, where the barriers for the residents? See how we can improve on that, but then also see what the difference is for somebody using this on a daily basis for a long period of time. We're also in talks now with the NHS in the UK to roll out a pilot in the new year as well.
Cool.
And that's sort of the same as what we're looking at here, but on steroids. The NHS are very proactive in using music. They're very big on that. There's a lot of research coming out of the UK around the benefits of this. And so their biggest thing is measuring the cost effectiveness of a platform like ours. So if we are able to implement music as part of the daily routine over a long period of time, what does that mean for the cost? And once we get those numbers, then clearly...
You're hard to say, no, we don't want this.
And we understand that the dollar value is very important there for big organizations and governments to adopt this, and that's fine. We know it works, and in the meantime, we don't want to prevent other people from being able to benefit from this.
It's available, so if you want to use it, you can.
Exactly.
And so I guess the push would be larger to people who are sort of at home by themselves, who aren't really in the care place yet, that's looking to stave off any sort of care needs for as long as possible. Because you think, as soon as you hit 60, you're going to decline, so you might as well start again.
I personally would say to everyone listening that, use music now, whatever age you are. But obviously, particularly for the older generation, this is super important. And so when we soft launched, we have a partnership with Universal Music. And when we soft launched, we donated 5,000 memberships to residents in aged care around Australia.
Right.
We're rolling those out at the moment. We found though that it's very hard for a lot of facilities to be able to roll this out. Actually, they don't have the capacity to do it because technology is also not at the top of their list with a lot of these places.
Yeah.
So it's now we've now got a handful.
It's changing though. Like people are thinking more in the way to make improvements.
Absolutely. I mean, if anything positive should come out of COVID, it's that the adoption of technology has increased because there were no alternatives. When people are isolated, how do we keep them connected to technology? So that's been something that's been positive out of this hell of a year that we've had, and that's the adoption rates growing. So we've partnered with a couple of companies that actually provide those services in aged care facilities. So the devices, the training of how to use the devices and everything else, and we are providing our music service within that, so that somebody can sit down and go, I really want to use this music platform, but I don't know how. Show me. Yeah. And there'll be somebody there to go, okay, well, this is how you use it, this is how you can update it, and all those little things. So we're definitely focusing on aged care and residential villages. Yeah. But we've also found that there's a lot of families, there'll be people like you and I buying this for their parents or grandparents. Yeah. And the beauty of being on the internet is you can set up an account and then just
say, hey, I'm here with it.
Log in for mum, and then she presses play. Yeah. And one of the ideas there as well is that we actually want to work with music therapists. That's very high on my list because with COVID, it's very hard to do your job if you can't actually see your patient. And doing things just over a Zoom call are also quite tricky. Yeah. So
because audio isn't really quite there.
No. So why not make use of this tool? Yeah. We want to work together with them to basically enhance their work and for them to be able to continue and grow with their patients as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of different opportunities for us around this because it's just a very novel thing. It's not really anything like this. Yeah. Which is good and bad. The good is, we can sort of figure out where we want to go with this. Yeah. The downside of that is the education piece. Yeah. And luckily, I love talking about this. That's a good thing. But that's really the biggest part here. People need to become aware of the benefits. So
how do people find you?
Well, the website is murumusichealth.com.
Yeah, Muru, M-U-R-U.
Yep.
Music Health.
Yeah. .com. Yep. Nice and easy.
Yep.
And everything is there, basically. Yeah. The website has a lot of information around the benefits, the how and the what and the why. And from there, you can very easily click launch music and then create an account, and then off you go.
And if they want to talk to you personally before they do anything, can they reach out on LinkedIn or how they find you?
I'll give my number now. No, I won't do that. No, they can contact me via email as well. Yeah. So Nicc, N-I-C-C at murumusichealth.com.
Cool.
So M-U-R-U.
Yeah.
Music Health.
Well, hey, thanks so much for the show. Really appreciate you coming along with heaps about musicology and really existed and how it works with your brain. So I'll start with the music now, that's for sure.
Great. Good. I've done my job then.
You have.
Thank you so much.
Confident. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, man. Thanks. Cool.
Ooh. Is that all right?